It's a big day for the Emacs and Helix communities. Timothy Chalamet is leaving Vim for Helix Emacs, which is Emacs with Helix as the editor embedded. And yeah, it's going to be a real complicated interop between Lisp and whatever you use to configure Helix. It's going to be awesome. But no, that's not why I'm quitting Vim. I'm not going to VS Code or anything like that. I'm staying with Vim. But Vim is just kind of at this point like a useless addiction. And a lot of people like who watch me for my other non-Vim content will be like, "Oh my god, this guy is finally realizing it. He's finally getting off this like endless time sink." But it's not so straightforward. Like if you're not into the ergonomics rabbit hole, it feels very easy to kind of dismiss as like a weird and useless hobby, right? Or addiction. But the reason it's not is because when you're involved in it, it's like something where you can make progress in areas like people haven't really before, at least for a long time, and there's a very small pool of people you're competing against. And so you can kind of feel like you're getting ahead in some ways. Maybe your thing is C++ and you don't really use Vim, which is completely fine, by the way. Any other editor is very reasonable to use. And yeah, you're doing your C++ project. You have to put in a ton of work to make something kind of novel because there's just so many C++ devs and so much has been done. And Vim, while in this community it seems like Vim users are everywhere, we're like a very small minority, maybe less than 2% or something of programmers are like into workflow stuff like this. And it feels like you can make good progress. It feels like you can do something that hasn't really been seen, especially for me. Like reading the deep pages of the Vim manual, yeah, I know like 80% of this stuff is pretty damn useless, but it feels like, hey, I'm discovering something that this content is weird. It's maybe not the most useful, but I genuinely feel like it's novel. I look around and I haven't seen anything on YouTube like this except for like one or two weird guys. There's this guy who solves advent of code in Vim, and he uses basically like every command you can think of, like serial manual reader. And there's nothing especially wrong with that. Like there are you can spend time in way, way worse ways, that waste a lot more time. But it doesn't, it's got kind of a bottom to it. Like whereas C++ or whatever other development in a programming language where you can make anything you want, there is no bottom. You could make theoretically something just amazing that has never been seen before. With this ergonomic stuff, right, you're capped kind of by the ultimate goal of the field of ergonomics, which is just kind of like get faster, get more comfortable. And you could take that very far. I've been considering in the last few days, like, if I were to really put work in on something, what would it be? Would it be, because I have so many different kind of skills, that I dabble with. Would it be the workflow stuff? Because I've done things, I like to think, that haven't really been seen on YouTube. But the end game of ergonomics, right? If I really buckled down and learned things and put in the effort to do things that haven't really been seen before, like completely everything. Like I just poured the time into mastering Vim, like a ridiculous amount of time, and also like other, I don't know, the keyboard layouts and layering and all that kind of stuff and speed typing. Like it would be a big time sink, and the maximum thing I would get out of it is like a really good editing experience, and it's hard to really extend beyond that. It would be really cool and really impressive, and yeah, it would be kind of interesting and unusual, and to be someone who's like been in this hobby for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years now, and be like the guy at it, like if I were to just pour the work in and like people are like, oh my god, that's like the guy. It would be like kind of like being a pro at some video game, you know what I mean? Like for a very small nerdy crowd of people, you'd be like, oh my god, that guy is just insane at what he does. And I mean, maybe you think that already about me with some Vim knowledge if you're like a beginner, but I don't know. I have a very pragmatic view of ability, and like Maybe it's just because I can see my own ability from where I am, but like I don't consider myself nearly at anything close to that level yet. That would be like typing at 300 words per minute and crazy stuff like that. But enough about workflow and ergonomics. The whole point of that segment of the video was it's capped. It's a cool hobby. There's a lot in it, but you can't go beyond a certain level, and that's why it's kind of a dead end thing to pursue. It's also really tough if you're on the inside of this hobby because, and also just to be clear, I'm extending this not just to Vim, but like any kind of optimization where, especially like in the software side, just of your workflow, you know, like it could be CLI scripting, it could be Linux rising, or I don't know, something with DWM, all this kind of stuff, you know, and keyboards and layouts and anything like that. The reason it's so insidiously hard to quit is because there is kind of a good that comes with the bad, you know? It's like a drug in a way. Like it wastes your time. Yes, but you're getting kind of a lot out of it, and especially at the beginning, you get a lot out of it because it is Vim and shell scripting and all that is related pretty intimately to programming, especially some more advanced concepts, you know, like to do advanced bash and have things communicating with each other, like you have to know a good amount about computers. Bash is a great example. Vim, I would say slightly less so, but also it does have many very clever, if not directly related to programming, like it's an example of an absolute masterclass in software. Like I don't want to take 20 minutes to glaze how much I love Vim here. Already know that, but like just looking at all these different features, like, I don't know, just for example, take the registers feature, having like 26 registers and a bunch of them are numbered and populate automatically is just like pretty incredible ingenuity, to say the least, and like implementation. It's a very interesting, like, wow, this is an inspired piece of work, this text editor. So yeah, it's easy to get ensnared because you get so much related stuff in the beginning. You know, you're learning a lot about programming. You're learning a lot about the workflow things. And yeah, I guess like I was saying earlier, the other point is it's easy to feel like you're getting ahead of other people because it's kind of a more niche field. But that does not mean that it's fully worth it. So what's my move from here? It's to, I don't know, it's hard to stop cold turkey, just like learning about Vim, working with Vim. I mean, honestly, like it's ridiculous, right? This is such an insane like meta first world problem to have, you know, but I'm doing work on something and maybe about every 20 or 30 minutes, you know, I start noticing something with my workflow that I'm like, oh, this could be better. And it's not like I have like a direct fix. I'm like, okay, I'm going to start writing some Lua. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to go install a new thing. You know, it's slowed down. It's like, I have an idea about something that could be a little better. And I kind of jot it down, you know, but then I'm thinking about it and it's just like, I've conditioned myself through so much of, it's like I've put in so much practice kind of almost inadvertently towards this workflow stuff that I now can't really turn off my vision for it, you know? Like everywhere I go, my mind is just analyzing for things like this. And kind of the problem is like the more you do that, the more you'll find. And eventually maybe it'll slow down, but I don't want to go all the way down that and figure it out. So yeah, I don't know. Like it'll be a whole process that I'm not sure the exact details of to like untrain that instinct. And I can just ignore it. And I think the more I ignore it, the more I'll get used to just kind of going with the flow. And you know, config is not perfect, don't care. It's faster than almost everyone else. Like if something is very majorly wrong with my workflow and I can get a big speed boost, okay, whatever. I'll take 5 minutes here or there. A lot of people in comments on my latest video were saying this, and it was like really, the more I read it, I was like, wow, so many multiples of people have gone through some kind of thing to the same extent. And I met a couple of other like people through doing this, I love to like just get other people's perspectives because there's some wicked smart engineers out there. It turns out like I don't know, people who do this are kind of weird and but not even weird and not in a bad way. It's just like people who are good software engineers tend to think about things a lot. And so they're just smart people who've noticed a lot of things about the world, I find. So talking to these guys, these senior software engineers, like a common pattern in three or four of them I've talked to is like they also kind of went down a Vim keyboard journey. I think keyboards are kind of a later thing. That's becoming popular now, but back in the day, like I think it was more common that you'd learn like Bash, and all the features of Vim or Emacs or whatever. And those guys are like, yeah, it was really cool, but I hit the corporate job and or I started my company, and I kind of just like at that point focused on the product rather than the workflow. And like after a while, I just forgot everything because it atrophies if you don't use it. And it's like, yeah, you don't want to spend your whole life just kind of maintaining a skill that is designed to just get you more efficiency in another skill, if that makes sense. Like it's the workflows are just the enhancer for the real work. And if you're spending all your time like enhancing the enhancer, it's like, okay, well you have like a 20x point multiplier here, but like you play the game like once every 3 years, it doesn't matter. And I've already got a point multiplier that's not perfect, but much better than most people in terms of my workflow. This sounds so schizo. I hope this makes sense. And yeah, now that I have that multiplier, I just got to actually do work on something. I'm not sure what that thing is yet, to be honest. I've been looking at all different kinds of things, and maybe you guys can cast a vote, because I've been looking at like C++ and that kind of low-level graphic stuff. And someone kind of sent me an email and convinced me not really to pursue C++. And I don't know, this could be a whole video topic in itself, right? I was looking at like C++ versus like C versus Zig versus Rust, and then there's other things like Odin, right? And it's because C++ is nasty, dude. Like it's such a mess after all these years. Like the more I've worked in it, the more I've started to realize how disgusting of a language it is. But at the same time, like, it feels kind of weird and bad to be like, that tool doesn't fit my design specifications exactly. It feels like over optimizing, like, C++, it's such a disgusting language. Like, I got to go to a purer, more well thought out language like Rust or Zig or Odin. And nothing at all wrong with going to those languages, but it's like something didn't suit me quite right, so I completely changed and like I'm optimizing something else again. It's another optimization rabbit hole, and maybe it's just like one time, but it's like I don't know. I feel kind of weak for being like C++. That's like an unstructured spaghetti mess now of a standard library and everything, and I want to like. I don't know. It just makes me feel weak to like give up on a language, not because of my ability being like it's not because I'm reaching the limits of C++. It's like a premature, I don't feel like it. And it's like, man, am I really that weak? But I don't know. That's a whole other video in itself. And also another thing to consider with it is I don't have a huge advantage in nicheness. I have to compete with a lot of people towards game dev and stuff like that if that's the area I wanted to go, or which graphics programming is that's kind of the pipeline. I was thinking like my better option is to pursue this board game because it's kind of stalled out just because I've had so many things I'm dividing my attention with. If I poured everything into it, I think I could really make a very, very interesting piece of media. And it's also like, it's got the less competition because fewer people are into board games these days. Video games have kind of taken over and it's a smaller community. And it's also just like, it's like a niche thing. Like I could make if I put a lot of effort into it, I could make like a really, really cool game, I think. And then I also like have, I don't know, I have the unique circumstances, like the art for a board game is kind of rare. I was talking to one of the guys in this audience who was really cool about that, and he was like, yeah, I've tried to make games many times. He had like really, really good design ideas, but having the art is like a big advantage I didn't think of. But anyway, that's also kind of its own whole video. The point is, like, I think the board game is really good because it also has kind of a programming element in terms of types, and types is also really good. I kind of know that I want to do something with types because it's it's niche, it's weird, and it's kind of we're still kind of pre the types bubble exploding and people like discovering it, which I'm pretty confident will happen eventually. There's a bunch of old heads being like, no, LaTeX, there's still things you can't do. And I'm not like a physicist who has to typeset crazy diagrams or anything, but just based on how granular and like Turing, I mean, LaTeX is Turing complete, but types is like a full blown programming language. I think those people who'd say that it can't do the certain LaTeX things have not really used it to the level where they understand that. Like the control you get from that language, even in these early days, it's pretty mature now, is just like unreal. And all the other features around it too, it's just like an absolutely brilliant piece of software. So I can see that eventually, like slowly, different journals will be like, all right, okay, well, we'll accept types. Like a lot of you are using it now, and there'll be a snowball effect. Getting in on the ground floor before that would be really cool, and just being like on the forefront of it. And I could be putting my eggs in the wrong basket with this, like language that compiles to PDF, PNG, like it's a weird concept and can be achieved with other things like Python, but I don't know, something about it, something about the experience of typed is like it's weird, you're not really seeing a ton of other people do this on YouTube, and I'm all right at it. I know the basics, but I think I could make something really cool when it comes to like a card compiler, like, or a board game software suite that like puts cards together for you, and the layouter is kind of built in types, and maybe it's like a drag and drop editor if you're making like a card generator, and it takes all your spreadsheet text and puts it on different cards with art. Like, what if there was like a typed editor, to control the layout process, and it would just be a prerequisite that types, and it's like such a great embedded programming language for graphic design, because I don't know, it's like a slightly smarter version of Adobe Illustrator or Figma, it's, and I don't know if that's better because you can get pretty good control on those things, but yeah, having some like language or some visual design toolkit where like the framework is a programming language, kind of, I don't know, that would be a very cool thing to pursue. But point is, I feel like types has a lot of potential in this board game project, and that's also why I like pursuing the board game. I'm a very multidisciplinary guy right now, and that's one project, like a single thing I could put a lot of effort into, but it also has things that are pretty interesting to, I would say, most people on this channel. If you're not into types right now because you think it's like a super mathy thing, like I hope to kind of break types away from that a little bit. I'm not fully sure what it's capable of yet because it is kind of a weird niche thing, but I do firmly believe there's a lot of potential to this little language outside of just like typesetting documents. I think it does have a place for generating graphics. And then the last thing I want to touch on is like recently there's like all this buzz around me. I don't want to say buzz. That sounds like I'm an important person. Like I'm like a very small YouTube community, but that I would try like Linux and Arch Linux specifically, or maybe NixOS or something like that in general. And I don't know. But this whole like thinking about Vim in this way is kind of leading me against that. And like, I know Linux is so important, and it has things beyond workflow that make it important, which are primarily, I guess, the ethos of it, like the freedom and standing up against corporate software and yeah, having your own thing. But I think as long as I understand and support that cause, and I guess the privacy too, like privacy is something I've kind of sacrificed by just being on YouTube, and I never really cared that much about privacy in the first place. When you grow up in like panopticon of a society, at this point in my life, it's already like, okay, I don't know, what am I doing? Like just hiding the, I don't know. I think privacy maxing whatever is cool. It's a very cool field. It's important that some people do it, but for me right now, it's also kind of like an optimization rabbit hole that would not get me anything tangible that I want and I'd be satisfied with. And then same thing, I think for Arch Linux and all of that stuff, it's it's just time to move on from that side of optimizing things. As much as you all want to see Arch and stuff, like I think it's a very brutally hard truth for people to accept on the Linux side, like the serious Linux rising side, that your operating system is actually not incredibly important in terms of getting work done quickly. And I mean, maybe you all know that and it's obvious instinctually, but like the fine-grained distinction, like when you're going to hate on another operating system, and if it's Windows, I totally agree with you. It's like, well, actually, these tools are pretty good. They've gotten some pretty incredible things done, and it's just like someone choosing not to focus so much so on their exact operating system implementation, Like, think about it like this, You're using Vim, they're using the Rider IDE, IntelliJ IDE, whatever, some IDE that you think is like kind of meh, or maybe they're using VS Code. But they got way more work in life than you, and yeah, you're good at Vim, but no one's really gonna remember that. So that's what I've been thinking about Linux recently. And Linux it's another one of those things, just like Vim, where its ideas, the helpful and the unhelpful, the time waste, are so kind of intimately intertwined, because you can get so much knowledge from Linux, but that's not exactly the direction I feel like I want to go. I'm not super interested in all that. This is intimately how a computer works, low level kind of stuff. People have been telling me, and I kind of alluded to it myself, like, oh, I want to go deep in C. I want to do all this memory stuff. I want to and to be honest, I'm not all that interested in those kinds of lower level programming implementation details. Like maybe one day, but I think the people that make the frameworks and the libraries and the databases and stuff like that, they're very smart, they're ingenious. It's just I'm not sure if that's for me. I don't want to dismiss the whole field based on the fact that I've experienced it a little bit, but yeah, I just working on like these low level things is very cool, and it's an essential like pillar of how everything in our world works, that there are guys that enjoy that. But for me, like being super deep in the software side of things is getting more and more finicky, and that's why again, like I'm interested in this types project, because it's more of like art than it is programming. Honestly, it's very, very high level. It's like super abstract on top of a bunch of programming concepts. But that is not to just dismiss that whole side of programming, kind of like the programming for programmers programming, that's something I could totally see myself coming back to one day. But for now, kind of, I want to do something that's facing a bigger audience of people. But yeah, so in terms of, I don't know, Vim tutorials on this channel, I guess you can probably expect to see a decline. I don't know that I'll totally abandon the workflow mentality, the optimizing my own workflow, but I want to make it very concentrated when I do, instead of just like regurgitating manual information. And even if I like kind of take the time to, I do have standards, even if it's like random information, I don't just spew random information, I don't give you like fucking useless, like the I don't know, whatever command for Vim that basically does nothing, I really try to say like, okay, maybe someone could actually use that, you know? And I think that makes me a little distinct from some other people on YouTube, but it's still ultimately, it's, yeah, it's not all that useful. So, like, in terms of workflow stuff on this channel, you can more likely expect to see something very concentrated with a lot less frequency, you know, and something like a whole dedicated video on making my own entire piece of a workflow, like programming my own tool, you know, which would be much more impactful, I think, than just like knowing Vim really well. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Hopefully this was a cohesive video. Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, because dude, some people, like, you can just feel the intelligence oozing off them just by the way they write. I don't want to like just glaze you all here, but some people in the last video, I was reading it and I was like, oh my god, this guy has been around the block in terms of knowing things and like being aware of the world and his surroundings. This guy is a very, very aware guy. Or girl, I don't know, if you're one of the 3% or 2%, I don't know. But yeah, catch you next time.